Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to get together with our distribution partners. We have two types of distribution partners, affiliates and white label partners, and we get together most weekday mornings at 8 o'clock Central. Subject to travel or holidays, typically we get together and spend a few minutes talking about strategies, tips, techniques, share success stories, and support each of you. This is also the venue when we roll out new announcements and new programming. So today I'm really excited to talk about this new resource. So I am sharing sharing my screen. We're looking at guaranteedfunding.org, and there's a new tab called Bad Credit Loans. So we're going to take a few minutes and talk about what these bad credit loans are, but most importantly, then talk about why it's important, how it's a resource for your clients, and of course, how you'll make money from this. But let's start with just at face value, why did we come up with this? Well, we see clients that come to us frequently that have some significant solvency or insolvency issues. And so we needed a resource to allow them, for example, to be able, we have the Startup Business Funding Package. What a great resource. Provides all the tools and the fundamentals necessary for a business in terms of a unique business address and getting filed with the Secretary of State, getting their EIN, building business credit, transferring assets, getting access to the Chapman Fund. Awesome, awesome. But this is not free, right? This is not free. And so when it came for people to pay for it, some people didn't have the money. So we set out to find a lending partner that would underwrite clients that frankly typically would not get approved for a cash loan. And with a fair amount of work and a number of you being involved, thank you for your involvement, those of you that helped, we have found a preferred lender. And so everything that I'm describing today on the bad credit loans is from the lender, because we're not the lender. We're not a bank. We're not a lender, but we have secured a lender relationship. So when I use these words like $5,000 guaranteed approval, that's not marketing. That's not a pitch. That's a factual statement directly from the lender. Now, are there underwriting criteria? There are, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So I think it's the broadest type of funding available anywhere in the marketplace, but there's still underwriting criteria, and we're going to go through that specifically. So as we read on the page here, having a bad credit score can be a barrier to being able to position your business for a large capital raise. Well, what does that mean? Well, because you and I know you can't just want, you can't just demand a big capital raise. You can't say, well, I just really need it. I really want it. You have to be qualified for it, right? That's what it takes. And so with the startup, I'm bouncing around about a bit, but I just want you to understand the context. So the Startup Business Funding Package, in fact, positions a business to be credible because they have a commercial address and these other elements we talked about. But it's not free to become credible. Now, some businesses are credible already. So that's what we're talking about here, is that in some cases, it takes some capital to get the business to be credible enough to get that large capital raise. Now, that's not what people want to hear when you're talking to clients and prospects. They just want you to have some magic wand, but there is no magic wand. We have to meet the underwriting criteria. So now we have the opportunity for individuals, even with poor personal credit. Credit is not a filter on this. No, this isn't a payday loan, but credit is not a restrictor on this. So again, I'm communicating what our lending partner has shared with us to share with you. So I believe it all to be 100% accurate and truthful. But again, we're the messenger, we're not the lender. So they asked me to share this with you today, that it's a safe and secure application. There is literally no credit check. There's no minimum credit score. So is there a hard inquiry? No, there's no credit check. Straight from the lender's mouth. Near immediate approval, so it's a quick turnaround. fast money transfer. And it's not an issue. Some of our clients have tried other places and haven't been approved. So like, oh, well, will that keep me from getting approved? Not according to the lender. No, that's not an issue. And of course, there's no fees to apply. So that's really what we're doing is pulling together the resources to help our clients, to help our program participants, whether they be in the credit and funding program or the startup business funding package, where they're working on either personally, down here scrolling down, where regardless if they're personally working to become credible for funding, and or they're trying to get their business credible for funding, this puts some money in their pocket up front. Now let's go through the underwriting criteria. And again, this is verbatim from the lender, so I do believe that it's accurate and true. So are there qualifications? Yes, but we're going to go through every qualification that they told us, so we're all on the same page. First of all, and this sounds kind of silly because you and I know to enter into a valid contract, you need to be at least 18 years old, but they wanted us to communicate that. So if you have someone that's 17 or 16 that has entrepreneurial desires, they don't qualify. Must be 18. No surprise there. That's not a sarcastic bullet, but that's what they're all about: documentation and transparency. The applicant must be able to demonstrate at least 3 months of employment. Uh-oh. Well, what if we don't have 3 months of employment? What if we're 1099? Well, that's a rub, isn't it? Because then we don't meet that. But remember what you and I do when we are helping people with a credit and funding program. One of the 3 C's is capacity. And one of the things that you and I do is we provide income verification. Why is that important? Because just as we see, even for this small bad credit loan, verifiable income is important. Now, business income is important for business loans. Personal income is important for personal loans. And certainly this bad credit loan we're talking about here is a personal loan. It's to be able to draw the capital in so the entrepreneur has some liquidity, but also able to afford the startup business funding package and or the credit and funding program. So if they don't have at least 3 months of verifiable employment, then that's a deal breaker. I can't change it, right? You and I don't do the underwriting. You and I can't change how the bank does their underwriting. As far as income, this is amazingly good. Real, but amazingly good. The income threshold they're looking at is very, very low. Very, very low. I mean, that's the equivalent of $12,000 a year. That's very, very low. Oh, what if someone doesn't have that? Well, that's what you and I can do. With the credit and funding program, we legitimately, legally, and ethically create income verification so they can meet those criteria. All right, let's go back. So we know we need to be an adult. We need to have at least 3 months of employment history. Need to be earning at least $1,000 a month. And so we're talking about W-2 here. 1099 is not going to qualify for this. Oh, so if I only have 1099 income, none of this will work. No, we're not saying that. But for the bad credit loans, needs to be W-2 income. But remember, anyone can have W-2 income from your own business. I have some people that they try to apply scrutiny to that. Well, that doesn't sound right. Well, you'd have to be a dumbass to think that you can't set yourself up as a W-2 employee of your business, right? And you can set your salary at whatever you want it to be. So if you want to show yourself making $1,000 a month, granted, we can do it legally and ethically. Oh, no, I want to make $1,000 a week. Great. You now make $1,000 a week. We can even set up an employment offer. So, because you might say, well, okay, I want to make $1,000 a week, but I don't have history of that. Okay, well, let's get you an employment offer that effective as of today, May 1st, you're now earning $1,000 a week. So that's fixable. must have a social security number, must have a valid bank checking account, must have an active email address. And I know it sounds silly, but again, I'm just a messenger. Must have a working cell phone. So these are the criteria for specifically the bad credit loans that we're talking about here. These are not, so don't wrongfully infer, oh, these are the criteria for other programs or other resources. No. We're just talking about this page here. Now, if you have questions, you have a client, a prospect that has questions, what do? You can go to the funding interview. And as we've talked about before, you can have them schedule a call. You click on that, it pops up Calendly. And again, if you're a white label partner, then you'll be setting up, we'll help you set up this infrastructure for yourself. If you're an affiliate, they're to come over to us, and then they can pick, a given day, pick a time, and schedule a call. If you want to be on that as a three-way, you can, but you don't have to be. So let's go back to the bad credit loans and make sure we understand how this applies to the bigger picture. Because what you and I don't want to be known for is, oh, we get people bad credit $5,000 loans. This is a means to an end. Let's say that they want to get larger business funding. Maybe they want to access the Chapman Fund, which only goes up to $250,000. I know that's not as much as some of you want or some of your clients want, but let's say they want to go into the Startup Business Funding Package. Well, the Startup Business Funding Package is not free. It's not free. And I think we have to make sure that we don't fall into this trap of thinking, well, if we offer anything that's not free, it's a scam. That's craziness. Go down to your local Mercedes dealership and say, I only want a free car. Go to the local restaurant, Del Frisco's, and say, I just want the steak that's free. I mean, that's nonsense. The world doesn't operate on free. Don't fall into that trap. Now, it needs to be a good deal for the customer and good for you. We'll talk about money for you in just a second. But the Startup Business Funding Package is $2,500, includes a great value proposition, and you make half of that. You make $1,250 if you're a white label partner. You make $1,000 if you're an affiliate. So that's where we're really seeing our distribution partners, and that's paid out daily, right? So we're seeing our distribution partners now on track, many of them, for making $1,000 a day. $1,000 a day. Well, that sounds too good to be true. It's not. Help one client a day enroll in the Startup Business Funding Package. You can watch the training and get more familiar with it. But that puts $1,000 in your pocket, or $1,250 if you're a white label partner, every time. Well, what if the person can't afford the $2,500? What have we been talking about? Then we'll use the bad credit loan to cover that. So they get $5,000. They use $2,500 of that to pay for the Startup Business Package, and the other $2,500 is in their pocket for operating expenses or whatever else they need. This is what was missing to be able to help more people get in the Startup Business Funding Package. So hopefully we've answered a couple questions. How does the bad credit loan program work? What are the qualifications? How does the client use this funding? Typically, they're going to be using it, but not exclusively, but typically they'll be using it to get into the Startup Business Funding Package. How much money do you make from that? You make $1,000 up front if you're an affiliate, or you make $1,250 if you're a white label partner. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the questions, comments, concerns that any of you have. Polly has the first one, but the rest of you can go ahead and type in questions, comments, concerns into the Q&A box. It's a function of Zoom. All right, Paulie asked, I gotta get back to the bad credit loans. He's asking, are there restrictions for using the loan? Okay, yeah, so technically, no, there are no restrictions on use of funds. I've talked about, Paulie and everyone else, I've talked about how we're using this to help clients typically be able to afford to get into one of these or both of these programs, but the lender is not requiring that. All right. And Oscar says this is a game changer, and I agree. Well, and I want to step back. Not everyone needs a bad credit loan, right? Some people get normal loans. Some people get normal funding, right? But this is for the audience that can't qualify for a normal loan. Timothy's asking what the interest rate will be. Hell, I don't know. I'm not the underwriter. I don't know what the interest rate will be. When the individual applies using the safe and secure application, they'll either get an approval with terms or they'll get declined. Almost everyone gets approved, of course. And so then those terms come up, and then they can decide are those terms that they want or not want. But you and I, Timothy, you and I and the rest of us, we have to avoid being in a position of quoting interest rates because it's not our call. We don't know. They can apply without any commitment, any cost, no commitment, no credit check, and find out. But you and I are intuitive enough to know, well, number one, someone that's lending millions and millions of dollars, they're not fools, right? So we're not going to game the system. They're going to underwrite it. Well, what do they underwrite it by? These qualifications, right? So the individual needs to meet these qualifications. But in terms of the term, how long they have to pay it back, or interest rates, that could very well be different for each individual and where they live, the state, because different state requirements. So I don't know what the terms will be. I'm just going to take a veil of ignorance. I don't know what the terms will be. But if they can't qualify for normal funding, which we help them with automatically if they're in the credit and funding program, but if they need the bad credit loan, they can fill out this form and we'll see what options they have. If they have questions, they need to speak with us first. Then we use the funding interview as I described to schedule. So what's important, and you could look at this two ways. You could look at it like Oscar and I do. Well, this is great, right? This is a great resource for people that otherwise don't have access to any borrowing capacity, which will allow them to participate in the startup package or the credit and funding program. Yeah, so Oscar and I think many of you see it the same. Others could be a pessimist and say, well, Tom, you don't know what the interest rate's going to be. You don't know how long they're going to have to pay it back. You don't know what the payments will be. What's the use of this conversation? Well, it's a resource that's real, it's available, and people can find out what the terms that they would be extended would be. But people that have managed their credit and money won't need this. This isn't for everyone. This is for the individuals that have credit issues that can't otherwise borrow money, right? And this is an important element to help more people, particularly start more businesses. Because with the startup business funding package, we're providing the turnkey to take someone from having nothing to having access to $250,000. We're transferring assets immediately over for their liquidity and collateral for funding. I mean, if you're not familiar with the startup business funding package, this is huge. We haven't reached 100 yet, but we're getting close to 100 new clients a day enrolling in the startup business funding package. This is incredible. This puts money immediately in your pocket. If you're a white label partner, you're making $1,250 today. $1,250. If you're an affiliate, you're making $1,000 tomorrow. There's a day delay if you're an affiliate because we have to transfer the funds to you. But this is not free. It's not free. People expect free. They're off track because you don't get everything in life for free. So with this, there's a $2,500 setup fee because there's cost incurred with doing this, even though a bunch of the things are in fact free, as you'll notice. And so with that, if they don't have $2,500, of course, they could put on a credit card or what have you, or we could go arrange financing through the bad credit loans. All right. And Oscar also asked, is it always 5,000? So the lender can loan in different increments. The lender has told us that they can lend in $1,000 increments, 2,500 or 5,000. But again, I'm sharing with you exactly what they've shared with me to share with you. And what they're saying is that it's 5,000 guaranteed approval with these attributes and with these qualifications. So hopefully if you have prospects that would like to participate in the startup business funding package, but they haven't had the money to do so, now we have a resource. If you have people that have actually enrolled, but they haven't paid because they're having trouble scraping together the money, now we have a new resource. Same for the credit and funding program. All right, so Sarah's asking about the access to capital, which is over here on the homepage. And that's a great point, Sarah. There's no upfront cost for the access to capital program, none. So would they need a bad credit loan, if they have bad credit, to get into the access to capital, which is shown on our homepage here? No, there's no upfront cost. So it's just important. Some people get confused, but it shouldn't be. It's like if you go to the restaurant, you can order the hamburger, you can order the shrimp, you can order the chicken strips. They're each different items on the menu that shouldn't be confusing to people. So we have different resources that could be used separately or in combination. You got the access to capital, 100,000 guarantee, no upfront cost, no upfront cost. We don't invoice them. We don't ask them to pay upfront. We have the credit and funding program, which is a bundled approach, does have an upfront cost, a refundable setup fee, but does include assistance for free in helping the client become qualified in terms of helping them build their personal and business credit at no charge, helping them with capacity, as we talked about earlier, at no charge, literally transferring collateral over to them at no charge. So there's a difference. There's a difference between these two, because in the access to capital, they're not getting free collateral. They're not getting free credit resources. They're not getting free capacity. So the 3 C's are bundled in and included for free in the credit and funding program, but there is a refundable setup fee. On the access to capital program, there is no upfront cost, but they're not getting those free items for free. Makes sense, right? The startup business funding package is really flipping everything over. It's the other side of the coin. This is regarding getting the business credible, because you'll see this so often. People will come to you and they'll say, I've got an 800 credit score and I make 250,000 a year. They've got all these personal attributes that are outstanding. Awesome. Well, is your business credible? Because you're coming for business funding. The business needs to be credible too. So this is where you and I can help a lot of people. They can already be an experienced entrepreneur, but if their business is not set up credibly, then they've got a problem in getting business funding. Now, they could go get a lot of personal funding in that example. So this is where you and I provide a turnkey, with this being the real carrot. The Chapman Fund is just hugely valuable, up to $250,000 without ever having to apply with a bank. It's an economic incentive from a taxing district. Quick cash, we've talked about. Quick cash is for those individuals that need help, that they don't qualify for cash funding yet. So we're able to get them 10,000 of receivables in 24 hours. You can go through the quick cash breakdown. We've talked about it before. Of course, we've been talking about bad credit loans and that new resource today. The partner tab is how you become an affiliate, free and easy. Receive, like I said, $1,000 for each person that enrolls in the startup package. Earn around $3,000 for each person that enrolls in credit and funding and or the access to capital. We provide a landing page for free. Affiliates are typically up and going within 2 hours. And then lastly, we talk about the funding interview page. Is just simply the mechanism that if you're an affiliate, to be able to get calls scheduled for your prospects that you've not been able to close, or we can do 3-way calls. Now, we have different scheduling links for clients. So this isn't meant for clients. This is meant for those that are not in the system yet. When we have clients, they use a different Calendly link, and that alerts us to prep differently, because if it's a client, we need to have reviewed that client's file before the call. We need to have that client's file up in front of us so we're able to talk very distinctly and accurately about the client's next steps. The funding interview is for a prospect. You see the difference? So if you refer any clients to the funding interview link, they'll be disappointed because we'll call them at the scheduled time, but we won't have reviewed their existing file and we won't be a very good resource. That's a different link that we provide to clients that are scheduled, that are contracted versus prospects. Okay, who else has questions, comments, concerns on the overview or specifically on the bad credit loans? We officially announced this yesterday via some outbound communication. I'd have to check this morning. I haven't yet. I think we ended up with around 500 responses. So we're still processing all of those. We'll have one of our, won't be me, but we'll have one of our team members reach out to everyone that has filled out this form. And what our team member does first is we look in our system and say, okay, is the person that just made this request, are they a current client? Are they someone that's maybe enrolled in one of the resources and they haven't been able to, for instance, pay the $2,500 for the startup business funding package? That helps us understand, okay, they're probably wanting to use the bad credit loan to move forward on that. But we also have had a tremendous number of people that aren't clients that are contacting us specifically regarding this. And so that's where we need to have a consultative discussion. Okay, what is it you want the $5,000 for? Does that dovetail into one of the resources that we have? Okay, who else has questions, comments, concerns on anything we've discussed today? I guess anything we didn't discuss today, or on the bad credit loans, which is a specific new resource. So from an action step, if you have prospects that you've not been able to close because, for example, they didn't have the $2,500 for the startup, then go ahead and get them enrolled, and then we can take them over to the funding resource. If you have other questions, comments, concerns, of course, let us know, but this is very practical for, well, it could be for a client that's signed that hasn't paid, or for prospective clients that haven't signed because they're worried about the refundable setup fee. Go ahead and we get them enrolled first in the package, and then we take them over here for the financing. So kind of view it like in-house financing, right? When you go to a car dealership, you could either bring cash with you, or you could work with the dealership to facilitate financing. All right, Alfred's asking, do we pay out commissions on the bad credit loans? No, because we're not charging them anything. There's no commissions. There's no revenue to you as a distribution partner for someone going through the bad credit loans. And that's partially by design. We're using this as a resource to help people get into the startup business funding package and or the credit and funding. Let's take credit and funding. It only has a $999 refundable setup fee. So if they get $5,000, they pay the $999 here, you get paid, and then they have $4,000 left working capital. If they're doing the startup business funding package, they get $5,000 here. They're going to pay the $2,500 for this, which gets you $1,000 or $1,250 if you're a white label partner, and then they have $2,500 left over. Some of you are white label partners and you're upcharging on these different programs, and that's fine. So you just got to do the math, right? They get the $5,000, and then you back out whatever you're charging if you're marking it up, and then the difference is the working capital they have left over. Carlos has one final question here on the income. Yet to my understanding, and we'd have to apply to see, but to my understanding, Social Security income is fine, retirement income is fine, disability income is fine. But maybe I don't have complete understanding on that, but that's my understanding. The nice thing about this is it's not like they're committed to something. We can go see if they get approved or not. There's no impact of their credit score. They're not paying any fees. They're not required to accept the funding. So it's kind of no harm, no foul to use this as a test, but it's primarily incorporated into our programming to help people afford credit and funding and the startup business funding package. That's the primary reason that this exists, is to provide external third-party financing for our other resources, which are valuable to the client and makes you great income. All right, well, thanks everyone. We had a full house today, even though we didn't really expect it to be here today. So thank you all for hopping on, and we'll see you back tomorrow morning. Have a great day.